Madness goes on, doesn't it? Economic collapse, pandemic, insane person in the White House, struggle for human rights taking place in the streets of our cities. The violence is escalating now. The police are forgetting, it appears, what the reason for the demonstrations and the resistance is all about. It's from 350 years of being denied simple, equal justice. That's all. And it is simple. It is simple. Molly and I did not participate over the weekend in the demonstrations. I've decided here in Atlanta it's a little bit too risky to have her there, although she disagrees with that. But, I'm the dad, right? But I've been watching from around the country the video reports on MSNBC and NBC and ABC and CBS and various networks and channels and stations. And to see people honestly struggling to understand and resist. First of all, to understand how in the hell we got to this point after 350 years of this bullshit. And then to resist. To say, this is enough. And let me be very clear here. I'm not trying to co-opt a movement that is trying to resist institutionalized white racism. And by the same token, I'm not trying to denigrate the righteous white people who are joining up with black folk to try to make the point that the shit's got to stop. It's got to stop. And if it doesn't stop, then the country's going to stop. I think we're at that point. I've been talking for years about putting 10, 20 million people in the streets in a form of passive resistance, in a form of Dr. King or Gandhian resistance. Neither of those men would have advocated this kind of violence. The violence is perpetrated by the state, not by the people who are resisting violence. But this is what's going on in this country right now. We have a third column, or a fifth column, whatever you want to call it, of these white agitators, these filthy, just horrific people who want to see death and destruction, the so-called Boogaloo group that I talked about, these white races, these Nazi dumbfucks who dress up like children in their play outfits, only they have real ammunition and real guns. And they are the ones who are adding this element of violence. Are some of the demonstrators showing some kind of violence, rage, anger? Well, yes, they are. How do you not show rage and anger when you've been fucked over as long as our black brothers and sisters have been in this country? How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you stifle it? How do you keep it down forever and ever and ever? When you know about the history of lynching and you know about the history of slavery and you see the contemporary slaughter going on in the goddamn streets. A woman emergency worker shot 8 times in her own apartment. George Floyd murdered on the fucking streets of Minneapolis, just murdered in plain daylight while people stood around, while cops stood there. How do you deal with that? Well, the answer's coming out at some point, and I think most people who still can think clearly knew that someday this shit was going to explode. It was going to take a catalytic moment, perhaps. The circumstances had to be right. So here are the circumstances. 30 or 40 million people all of a sudden don't have a job. A pandemic is raging through the country, 100,000 plus people dead. And in the middle of it all, 4 white cops actively and passively commit a fucking murder in the middle of the daylight, in the middle of the street, in the middle of Minneapolis? And what? We're supposed to just sit back and say, well, yeah, you know, business as usual. A lot of white people have been saying that. And I'm not trying to lessen by any means the effort put out by righteous whites to join their black brothers and sisters in resistance. Okay. So white people, even in this catastrophic moment, white people still, because of the nature of racism, the nature of the United States of America, still have the protection of white privilege. I understand that. But I also understand that these younger white people, who don't look at this mess from the same pinnacle that I do at my age and my experience, these younger whites are saying, you know, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. As Dr. King said, injustice anywhere endangers justice everywhere, or something to that effect. You know what he said. A letter from Birmingham jail. So here we are. And it's going to continue. This one's not going to stop. We've had these moments before, haven't we? After the assassination of Dr. King, after the Rodney King not guilty verdict of white cops, after this one and that one and the other one, on and fucking on and on and on. There's a moment of outrage and then it subsides. Not this time, I'm afraid. This time, what? I don't know. One of the things I have observed over the course of the past couple of months, when the lockdowns and the isolation and the voluntary quarantines and all this stuff has happened, is something that white people, and I say this as an observer, not as a critic, because I'm white. But something that we white folk have not experienced before. Maybe 100 years ago, but nobody remembers that shit. Well, everybody who was alive then is dead now, for the most part. But white folk are experiencing something that black people have been putting up with since forever. Restrictions, denial of movement, denial of freedom. You can't go in there. You can't turn left here. You can't do this. Put on a mask. Where's your gloves? Where's your identification? It's 9 o'clock. What the hell are you doing on the street? And I think it's making the white the white experience, the white privilege that exists in this country, all of a sudden take a look at itself and these restrictions and say, wait a minute, what is this all about? Where did this come from? And black folk are going, yeah, well, welcome to our club. Welcome to what we've dealt with for 300 plus goddamn years. Being told by authorities that you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't go there and you can't go here. And where's your identification? We have how many millions of people? Tens of millions. We are beyond the Great Depression now. 30, 40 million people unemployed. People can't pay their rent. I'm talking about white folk and black, but I'm talking about white folk experiencing this on such a massive scale as never before. Where's the money for the rent or the mortgage? Where's the money for the car payment? Where's my education? Where's my health care? Where's anything? I need a new pair of sneakers. I need a new pair of jeans. I need a new t-shirt. I don't have the money. What's going on? And a huge segment of white society is experiencing this in these numbers for the very first time. I mean, really, truly. And again, this is not a stomp in the face of white people. 99% of us have just cruised along, not even realizing what white privilege is. Don't have a clue. Well, the alarm just went off a couple weeks ago. A month ago? When was it? But the alarm went off, and people are starting to wake up. And you know what they're waking up to? They're waking up to this. What the fuck is going on? How many of us have not seen the video of George Floyd being slowly murdered in the fucking street? Like some kind of medieval torture. Like the Christian church in medieval times torturing somebody. You don't believe in the Lord Jesus Christ? You're a Jew? You're a Moor? You're an atheist? You're a witch? Die, motherfucker. And we watched this. We saw this. And the look on the murdering cop's face, like, ho-hum, yeah, well, as soon as I get this son of a bitch dead, I think I'll go take a leak. Anybody else want to come over here and hold this fucker down? So when you have millions upon millions upon millions of people who have been effectively quarantined from everything, everybody, and all of a sudden this happens and the explosion occurs. Yeah, the explosion occurs. Hey, Truth Seekers, while we're practicing safe social distancing, it's a great time to treat yourself with some seriously delicious, responsibly sourced coffee. Awaken to pleasure with River Moon Coffee. But don't take my word for it. Here are 2 recent reviews. Quote, "We sell River Moon Coffee at Marine General Store, and I can't seem to keep up with customer demand. Not only is the coffee excellent, but the philosophy behind it, the careful sourcing and constant research to bring a quality product to customers, appeals to the hearts of our community." End quote. And here's one from a fellow Malloy listener. Quote, "I love this coffee. I buy it in 5-pound bags. I especially love the Truth Seeker blend." End quote. Sounds like they're planning ahead for the apocalypse. Anyway, support a progressive small business that supports this program. Go to MikeMalloy.com and click on the River Moon Coffee link on the main page. You'll thank me later.